On my wedding day, my boyfriend's ex-girlfriend started showing up personal photos of them together on a big screen. Everyone was totally taken aback, and I lost it, confronting him right there. He just shrugged and said, "Jess is being super immature. Do you really need to freak out?" I was in shock. His ex had just trashed my wedding, and he's telling me not to be mad? With his backing, she went even further, slapping me and giving me dirty looks. "You, a deaf person, actually think you deserve to marry Alex? Fine, I won't marry him, but they won't have it easy either." At my wedding, out of nowhere, a large screen lit up with pictures of Alex and his ex, Mia. The host quickly shut it down, but everyone had seen it. I stood there, staring at Mia, who was sitting at one of the tables looking like a bride in her white dress. Furious, I stormed over and slapped her. Alex saw this and shoved me roughly aside. "Mia is just being immature. Do you really need to lose your cool?" I almost lost my balance, staring at Alex in disbelief. Mia touched her slapped cheek, tears welling up in her eyes. "Alex, I wish you happiness without you. I'll try to live my best life." Tears streamed down her face, and she ran off in distress. Instinctively, Alex tried to chase after her. "Alex!" I called, my voice breaking. The ceremony had just started, and he was going to ditch me in front of everyone? He hesitated, seeing the situation, but only paused for a moment before turning back to me and said, "We'll push the wedding back by half an hour. I'll be right back." I watched him walk away. My parents came over to comfort me, urging me to stay patient. But I knew there was no way Alex would return in half an hour. Sure enough, an hour passed with no sign of him. I became the talk of the party. "Sorry, everyone, but today's wedding is now a birthday bash. Turns out, it's my 25th. Enjoy the cake and I'll collect your wedding gifts later. Hope you all have a blast." I tried to save face for both families. After sending off the guests, Alex's mom left without a word. My parents were furious, and all I could do was comfort them. Back at the hotel, exhausted, I couldn't help but video call Alex. It took 6 tries before he finally answered, and Mia showed up on the screen. "Alex, you should go back. The wedding's a mess. Jess will be pissed. She'll just wait for me quietly," Mia sneered. "She's really trying to win you back, huh?" My chest tightened with pain, and I ended the call before hearing more. Half an hour later, Alex called back, but it was just a voice message. I didn't pick up. That night, I stayed with my parents at the hotel. After midnight, Alex kept calling, but I had my phone on silent. The next morning, my parents looked worried. I tried to smile. "Mom, Dad, you can head back now. I'll be okay." My mom looked heartbroken. "You've been with him for 3 years and even got a marriage license." Her voice was full of disappointment towards Alex. I hugged her tight. "I'm sorry about how the wedding turned out. I'm going to break up with Alex." My parents, who worked abroad, had come back just for my wedding. Now they had to see their daughter become a laughingstock. They're open-minded, and after seeing how much Alex hurt me, they backed my decision. They wanted to stay and comfort me, but I finally convinced them to leave. They love me so much, and I didn't want to drag them into my mess. When I got back from the airport, Alex was waiting for me. His hair was damp, and he was dressed in a suit, looking freshly showered and changed. "Jess, this is for you." He handed me a box with a sapphire necklace. I looked at him silently. In the past, whenever he upset me, he'd just give me jewelry, like hitting me with one hand and offering a sweet treat with the other. Back then, I loved him and was willing to be smoothed over. But after last night, everything had changed. "It's too precious. I couldn't take it." Alex brushed it off with a smile. "We're already married. What's mine is yours, so why can't you accept it?" I stared at him straight on. Finally, he gave in. "I'm sorry, honey. Last night was my fault. You know Mia? I've been with her for 6 years, and she's struggling to accept that I'm getting married. I was worried she'd do something drastic." "So what? You just left me to handle it alone?" I questioned. Alex frowned impatiently. "I already explained it to you. What else do you want?" I felt my heart drop. "I need an apology. It was Mia who messed with the screen yesterday, right? She wanted to embarrass me, and those photos were hers. She hurt me, so shouldn't she apologize?" Alex looked annoyed. "Jess, can you stop making a big deal out of this? I already told you Mia is just immature. My heart sank. I could almost hear it shatter. There's an issue at work. I can't go on our honeymoon today. We'll reschedule. He adjusted his suit and left. I didn't even get to mention the divorce. Alex was my senior in college. We met 3 years ago at an alumni event, introduced by the dean. He was the one who pursued me. At first, he seemed calm and caring, so we started dating naturally. Later, I found out from the campus forum that Alex and Mia had been a famous couple in college. They dated from freshman year until 2 years after graduation before splitting up, supposedly due to personality clashes. 6 years is a long time, no doubt, but that's no excuse for Alex to bail on me on our wedding day. Back to reality, I impulsively called Alex's assistant. Assistant Ryan, is there a problem at the company? Ryan sounded confused. No, President Alex had everything set so he could go on the honeymoon with you. Got it. Thanks. I packed my things and moved back to my place. After calming down, I went to the university to do some modeling work, turning off my phone. When I got home from work that evening, Alex was waiting at my door. Jess, can you stop being difficult? I looked at him calmly. Let's find a time to get the divorce papers. Alex chuckled like he'd heard a joke. Jess, you're from out of town and have a disability. Are you sure you'll be better off without me? His gaze fell on the hearing device behind my ear. When I was 6, I lost my hearing due to a high fever from a middle ear infection and have relied on a cochlear implant ever since. Alex knew about my condition from the start. The man who once praised my courage and positivity was now using my vulnerabilities against me. I was utterly disappointed, yet he was still confident. Come back with me, and I'll treat this as just a little tantrum. As for the wedding, I'll set up another one for you. The way he said it felt like charity, as if I were clinging to him from a lower position. I'm serious about this. I'm not throwing a tantrum. I spoke with utmost sincerity. Alex didn't believe me. He looked me up and down. Are those clothes from a thrift store? We've been together for 3 years, and I've never seen you wear designer brands. You always carry a tote bag. Even at our wedding, your parents were dressed plainly. With a background like yours and your own limitations, aren't you just throwing a tantrum by asking for a divorce? As he spoke, I couldn't help but laugh at myself. I moved abroad with my parents at a young age where people didn't care about designer labels. They just valued comfort and casualness. They influenced me, so when I came back home, I didn't care much either. Thrift store clothes always suited me. As for the tote bag, I genuinely find it simple, eco-friendly, and practical. I never expected Alex to interpret my lifestyle as a reflection of my family's background. It's honestly laughable. Who says having money means you have to flaunt it with flashy jewelry? Tomorrow at 9, I'll be waiting for you at the office, and we'll head to the Civil Affairs Bureau together. Our, uh, with our different lifestyle values, I didn't want to argue further. I opened the door and went inside. Seeing Alex about to follow me in, I quickly slammed the door. It hit his nose straight on. Outside, he shouted angrily, Jess, stop being unreasonable. I already gave you a way to back down, and you're still making a big deal out of this? Leaning against the door, I listened calmly to his exasperated words. Just a month ago, we were planning our honeymoon together. Now, things had gone south. My phone buzzed with a friend request on WeChat. It was Mia. As soon as I accepted it, she sent a message. Hey, I'm Mia, the one you know. Before I could reply, she sent 6 photos. The first 3 were from today, showing Alex cooking noodles in the kitchen. The next 3 were from our wedding day, with Alex in his suit, sitting on a bed with a corsage on his chest, handing Mia a glass of water. I felt like I was watching something disgusting. Suppressing my disgust, I replied, never seen someone so shameless about wrecking a marriage. Mia sent a cute sticker in response. Alex doesn't blame me, you know? He says you love him, that you're clingy. Are you really that dependent on him? I responded. Our issues have nothing to do with you. She sent another smug sticker. Believe it or not, I can get him to come to me with just one call. Sure enough, his phone rang outside the door. I heard him say something quietly, then he stopped knocking and left shortly after. I peeked outside to check, only to see the back of his car driving away. 15 minutes later, Mia sent another photo showing Alex getting out of his car and walking toward her. We dated for 6 years and have a lot of sweet memories. Do you really think you can win his heart? Then she posted on her social media. After 6 years, the spark is still there, along with a picture of the sapphire necklace. It was the one Alex had given me, which I had left on the coffee table when I moved out. I suddenly felt sick. I immediately blocked both Mia and Alex on WeChat. The next day, I went to Alex's office to find him. The receptionist probably heard about the wedding fiasco, giving me a pitying look. I stayed calm and called Alex, but he didn't answer. So I called his assistant, asking him to let Alex know I was waiting in the lobby. 2 hours later, Alex finally came down, looking annoyed. Jess, you're only embarrassing yourself by making a scene. I don't want to say anything more. Let's get a divorce. Plenty of employees were walking by, and my words were loud enough for several to hear. Alex seemed his pride was hurt, and his face darkened. Fine, divorce it is. I had driven myself there, so I personally drove him to the Civil Affairs Bureau. The atmosphere in the car was tense, and I didn't spare him a glance. Finally realizing I was serious, Alex's tone softened. Honey, I know I messed up. Can't you give me another chance? He reached out to grab my hand, but I pulled away. He was naturally handsome with soulful eyes that now looked lost. For 3 years, I'd admired those eyes and envisioned a future with him. Now, I felt heartbroken. I deliberately avoided looking at him. At a red light, his phone rang, and he answered it. I could hear Mia's voice on the other end, though I couldn't make out what she was saying. His expression instantly tightened. He looked at me instinctively. At that moment, a car rear-ended us with a sudden jolt. Thankfully, it wasn't serious, just a small shake. 2 large men got out of the car behind us, looking pretty intimidating as they approached. Alex got out of the car, and I thought he was going to talk to the men, but instead he turned to me and said, Mia slipped and fell at home. I'm going to check on her. Handle things with the guys, and drive back yourself. Sweetheart, please don't make a fuss. I really love you, okay? He tried to lean in and kiss me for reassurance, but I turned away with a serious look. He stiffened for a moment, casting a displeased glance before rushing towards a bus that had just started to pull away. In the heat of summer, my heart felt colder and colder. The men in the car behind saw I was alone and demanded an outrageous 5,000 yuan for damages. Even though they had rear-ended my car, mine was undamaged while theirs had a broken front light and a sagging bumper. Annoyed by their bullying, I insisted on calling the police. Unexpectedly, one of the bald men grabbed a large wrench from under his seat and swung it at me. I quickly stepped back, only to be shoved hard by the other man who had also gotten out of the car. Caught off guard, I fell to the ground, feeling a stabbing pain in my abdomen as warmth spread from the ground. They fled in their car. A passing driver kindly called for an ambulance and reported the incident to the police. At the hospital, I was told I had suffered a threatened miscarriage. The baby's condition is serious. If you want to keep it, you'll need to be admitted immediately. Otherwise, you'll have to undergo a procedure to clean out the womb and ensure a full recovery, the doctor advised. Please arrange the procedure, I replied. On my 4th day in the hospital, I ran into Assistant Ryan. His mom was scheduled for surgery to remove uterine fibroids. Later that evening, Alex rushed to see me, accompanied by Mia. Jess, he approached my bed with a guilty look. I'm so sorry. If I hadn't left you, our child wouldn't have been lost. I gave a cold smile. Don't worry, even without this incident, I would have terminated the pregnancy. Alex's face changed. Mia couldn't stand it any longer and interjected. Jess, without a hearing aid, you're basically mute. Meeting a man as outstanding as Alex? You should know your place. I scoffed and raised an eyebrow at her. You want me to divorce him so you can take my place, yet now you come here playing innocent? Mia paled and fell silent. Alex composed himself and said, Jess, I brought Mia here to apologize to you. He gave her a signal with his eyes, and reluctantly, Mia muttered, I'm sorry I ruined your wedding. It was all my fault. I watched them with amusement. Earlier, I had struck up a conversation with Ryan's mom and learned that Alex had recently taken Mia on a business trip. Apparently, Alex had made her his chief secretary. Alex, I just want a dignified divorce. After all, you're the company president. If I get a reporter involved, it might tarnish your reputation as an entrepreneur. Alex hadn't expected me to say this and looked at me with a slight sneer. Fine, we'll divorce, just don't come crawling back later. I smiled faintly. I won't regret it. The next morning, I eagerly arranged for Alex to meet me at the Civil Affairs office. Once the paperwork was done, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Mia got out of her car to greet Alex, and she couldn't hide her elation now that he was officially single. As we parted, Alex turned to me and sneered, "I'll see how you manage without me." Once I'd recovered, I threw myself back into work. The mathematical modeling for the dam project I was leading was almost done, and the government was preparing for bidding. Many companies wanted to meet with me to discuss obtaining the construction data. Jess Brightstar Corp has requested a meeting at your convenience. Brightstar Corp was Alex's company. I hadn't expected them to bid on this project. To save everyone's time, I told all bidding companies there would be a single unified meeting, and we wouldn't be accepting any private appointments afterward. My assistant Leo handled the arrangements. The meeting was held in a conference room at the university office building. When I arrived, the representatives from all the bidding companies were already there. This project was massive, with a government budget estimate of around 4.5 billion yuan. Not only could the chosen company earn a significant profit, but they'd also gain a stellar reputation for handling a public service project of this magnitude. So, all the company execs were here. As I entered the meeting, Mia, sitting alongside Alex in the front row, looked at me with disdain. "This isn't where you belong." Alex assumed I was here to cause trouble and came up to warn me. "Jess, we're divorced. Don't ruin this for me." I smirked. "President Alex, it's been 2 months and you're still so self-centered." Alex watched me warily. Leo stepped forward. "President Alex, please take a seat. Professor Jess will be giving a unified presentation and won't be accepting private meetings." Alex was puzzled. Leo introduced me to everyone. "Hello, everyone. This is my PhD advisor, Jess. She's the chief engineer in mathematical modeling for this project, and we'll be sharing the relevant data with you all." Alex and Mia's expressions changed instantly. Under their shocked gazes, I walked up to the podium and began the presentation. After the meeting, Alex rushed up to me. "You're the modeling chief engineer. How old are you?" I replied calmly. "Isn't President Alex aware that prodigies exist? My dad is a highly respected figure in the math world, and my mom is renowned in architecture. Hortz." I grew up surrounded by their influence and fell in love with mathematics early on. I skipped grades to get my PhD and, following my parents' advice, returned home to teach as a PhD advisor, taking on mathematical modeling work as well. It was probably my dedication to math that made Alex my first love. With no experience in relationships, I didn't notice how neglectful he was during our time together. He never asked about my family, showed no interest in my work, and never included me in his social circles. Looking back, that sweetness was actually cold indifference. Thankfully, we're no longer connected. I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard Mia's skeptical voice. "She must be faking it. She's only 25, several years younger than us. Who does she think she's fooling?" To celebrate the successful completion of my work, the school organized a dinner. Coincidentally, we ran into Alex. In a sharp suit, he was escorting a group of elites out. When he saw the school officials, he came over to greet us, showing a hint of surprise upon seeing me. The school official who had introduced Alex and me was also present. Seeing Alex sitting beside us, he started with his old talk. "Alex, I introduced Jess to you because she's exceptional. I was thrilled when you two got together after 3 years, but I can't believe you messed up at the wedding. Do you know that she's actually a highly paid lecturer at our school?" The school official frowned. "She's young. I always thought she was just an exchange student." "Who told you she was an exchange student?" The school official frowned again. "She's a top modeler in the math department, leading several projects. Her patents alone are enough to sustain her for years. Her parents are both distinguished professors." Alex looked shocked. I lowered my head in self-mockery. "Professor Lee, Alex and I are no longer involved. Let's not bring up the past." At the end of the gathering, Alex insisted on giving me a ride home. I politely declined, waving down a cab instead. But when I got home, I found Alex waiting at my door. "Jess," he greeted me, as if he'd forgotten we were divorced. I looked at him calmly, curling my lips into a sneer. "President Alex, we're divorced." He reached out to hold my hand, and I recoiled as if from something contagious. His hand froze midair. "Jess, I regret it. I haven't been able to forget you for the past 2 months. can we get back together? I just laughed. When we divorced, you said I'd regret it. But now, it seems you're the one filled with regret. Whether he was sincere or had other motives, I couldn't tell, nor did I care. Sorry, I have no interest in taking steps backward. I rejected him clearly. Over the next few days, Alex kept popping up in my life. When I was in the lab, he'd wait outside with flowers. When I was teaching, he'd sit in the back like an attentive student, staring at me dreamily. He even showed up at my doorstep in the morning with breakfast. I was endlessly irritated by his persistent pestering. When Alex showed up in front of me once again, I got straight to the point. I won't interfere with the bidding process. Everything will be based on Brightstar Corporation's strength. Alex froze for a moment. Jess, I'm genuinely sorry. This has nothing to do with the bidding. I was silent for a moment. Then, with a calm and resolute gaze, I replied, but I don't love you anymore. Alex's face darkened, and he didn't try to approach me again that day. But that evening, I got a call from an unknown number. Mia was on the other end, crying and asking me to pick up Alex from a bar. Finding it absurd, I just hung up. The next day, Mia came to my university to find me. Jess, do you know how much effort Alex has put into this project? How many sleepless nights he's had? Can you really bear to let all his hard work go to waste? You've got the wrong person. I'm only responsible for modeling. The bidding process is none of my concern. Mia pressed aggressively. We know about your background now. With your influence, you could make sure Brightstar Corp wins with just a word. You loved Alex so much, and now you won't even do this little favor for him? I laughed. Times have changed. After everything Alex did, do you really think I would still love him? Mia's breath caught. Alex cared for you at least once. Can't you help him out of consideration for your past relationship? I'm afraid I can't help. It's time for my class. I turned and walked away. Desperate, Mia shouted after me, Jess, if you won't help, I'll make sure you regret it. I stopped and looked at Mia, her beautiful face twisted with resentment. I smirked. Since you guys don't want me to have peace, I'll make the first move. Before entering the classroom, I posted the demeaning messages Mia had sent me online, along with a photo of her with Alex. I acted quickly, so her rumors backfired, leaving both her and Alex humiliated. After this incident, Brightstar Corp's chances of qualifying for the bidding were highly unlikely. Before I knew it, the university's anniversary celebration was upon us. At Leo's request, I went shopping to buy something nice to wear. On the day of the celebration, I donned a formal white evening dress and mingled with the alumni, sharing drinks and conversations. A figure approached me, Alex, with his gaze fixed on me. Jess, you look stunning. I raised an eyebrow. Thanks for the compliment. I know I'm not one to focus on my appearance or bother with makeup. Alex's eyes grew more intense. The rumors were all Mia's doing alone. I had no clue. I shrugged indifferently. It's fine. After all, I already embarrassed both of you. Mia had posted on the university forum, saying I had abandoned my fiancé of 3 years after achieving success and had used him for money all along. I retaliated by exposing her role in ruining my wedding and Alex's affair. Leo posted about my accomplishments, proving that I had achieved success long before I met Alex and had millions in my bank account, never needing to use his money. I backed it all up with photo evidence, including pictures of the two of them at a hotel during the 3 days I was hospitalized after the miscarriage. This series of actions successfully silenced the cheater and his mistress. Alex looked remorseful. Jess, is there really no going back for us? Feigning surprise, I replied, didn't you say you'd been with Mia for 6 years and couldn't abandon her because of your deep feelings? Alex's face contorted with pain. I regret it. Jess, please give me another chance. Jess, come here. I'd like to introduce you to another academic star. The university administrator who had initially introduced me to Alex came over excitedly, allowing me to escape. He led me over to a young man with bright, lively features but an unmistakably youthful look. It's you, I said, surprised. He called out excitedly. The administrator looked back and forth between us. Jess, you know Chris? I smiled at Chris. We'd actually met in our teens when my parents thought the math curriculum overseas was too slow and sent me back to attend tutoring classes during the summer and winter breaks. That's where we first met, and later we crossed paths at the International Mathematical Olympiad. After that, I went on to my PhD and got busy with various projects, and we lost touch. Chris was much more thrilled to see me than I was. He came up and gave me a tight hug. It's so great to see you. I was delighted too. After all, the administrator was right this time. Chris truly was a bona fide academic star. We were laughing and talking, while Alex, who had been standing nearby, looked on with a sour expression. But no one paid any attention to him. Since the whole mess about him and Mia had spread online, Alex's reputation had plummeted. Even the teachers who once took pride in him no longer acknowledged him, including the university administrator. Alex seemed like he wanted to join our conversation, but since Chris and I were discussing math-related issues, he couldn't get a word in. Before long, Mia, dressed up brightly, came looking for him, and he avoided her with a serious expression. At the end of the event, Chris, still somewhat unsatisfied, asked for my WeChat and phone number, not feeling at ease, repeatedly asking, "Jess, you won't suddenly cut off contact with me, right?" I shook my head. I'm currently working at a university, I've signed a contract, and I won't leave within the next 5 years. Chris, excited, wanted to hug me again, but I stepped back. His enthusiasm was a bit overwhelming. He realized his overzealousness and apologized with a smile. Well, see you tomorrow. Later, I learned that Chris had applied to teach at the university and became my colleague. He even rented a house across from mine, becoming my neighbor. I'm not great at cooking, so naturally he started making meals for me every day. Gradually, except when we were at work, he was practically inseparable from me. I'm not stupid, so I could sense his feelings for me. However, I had just gotten out of my previous relationship and wasn't ready to jump into a new one so quickly. Luckily, Chris didn't push it and just spent every day discussing math with me, which made life feel great. But Alex kept lingering in the background. Alex took a big hit when Brightstar Corp lost its bid for the project. I heard from colleagues that he had been drinking at a bar for a week and had broken up with Mia. I'm a straightforward person, and since we were divorced, I didn't care about his matters and just focused on my research. But beneath the surface of my peaceful life, there was an undercurrent. When the incident occurred, I was walking out of the elevator as usual when a man in a gray jacket suddenly rushed at me with a long knife. I instinctively dodged backward, trying to avoid him in the narrow elevator. "It's all your fault, it's all your fault, you took my place." I recognized him as the foreign PhD student hired alongside me, who also worked on mathematical modeling after joining the university. But the school leaders said his imagination was lacking, making him unfit for the modeling work. "Idiot, you should die." He swung the knife again, and this time, I was slashed on the arm, causing blood to pour out. I screamed for help, but there was no one around. Just as his third swing was coming toward my head, a man in a suit lunged and shoved him aside. "Jess, go! Get out of here!" I froze for a moment. The attacker's bloodshot eyes were wild with rage as he fought fiercely with Alex. I saw the janitor at the elevator entrance and rushed out to grab the mop from her to hit the attacker. The attacker glared at me, his eyes burning with murderous intent, as if he wanted to devour me. Alex held onto him tightly, not letting him break free and hurt me. Thud! The chilling sound of the knife plunging into Alex's abdomen made my scalp tingle. In an instant, blood oozed from his mouth, but he still clung to the attacker. His gaze, however, was fixed on me. He was smiling. My blood seemed to freeze, and I almost forgot about the danger. Thankfully, campus security rushed over and stopped the attacker's madness. While waiting for the ambulance, I pressed my hand against Alex's wound. "Alex, don't die." Alex weakly held my hand, his eyes locked onto mine. "Jess, can you forgive me?" I looked at him with a calm expression. "You can only be forgiven if you live." Alex was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. The foreign PhD student was arrested by the police. By the time Chris arrived, I was covered in blood, waiting outside the operating room. "Your arm?" I glanced at my arm, wrapped in bandages. "It's been disinfected and stitched. It's fine." Chris looked at me with concern, his gaze never leaving the operating room. After a long 5 hours, the doctor finally came out, exhausted. The patient's will to live is strong. As long as he survives the 24-hour critical period, he should be fine. Chris and I both breathed a sigh of relief. After arranging a caretaker, we were about to leave when assistant Ryan and Mia showed up. As soon as Mia saw me, she rushed over, attempting to slap me, but Chris quickly grabbed her wrist, stopping her. Mia screamed furiously. You wretch! Haven't you hurt Alex enough? He risked his life for you, and you just want to walk away? How can it be that easy? I looked coldly at the raging Mia and signaled to Chris to leave with me. Chris released Mia and quickly caught up with me. On the way back, he seemed hesitant to speak. You're wondering if Alex risking his life for me would make me reconsider, right? Chris nodded gently, unsure. I shook my head firmly. No, it won't. I don't believe in repaying a debt of gratitude with my life. There are many ways to show gratitude, but I won't choose one that goes against my own feelings. Back home, Chris prepared water for me to wash up. With one arm out of commission, I was practically relying on him to help me wash. His face remained flushed throughout. He's kind of adorable. The next 24 hours felt long, but when we received the news that Alex had regained consciousness, Chris and I went to the hospital to see him. Seeing me and Chris together made his already pale face even whiter. I walked over to his bedside, looking down at him. Alex, get well soon so you can get back to managing Bright Star Corporation. Thinking I was concerned about him, his eyes brightened. But I continued. Don't think you can use this to claim something from me. I'll only despise you for it. With that single sentence, all of Alex's hopes were dashed. You saved me this time, so let's consider it a way to make up for all the hurt you've caused me. We're even now. Hating someone is mentally exhausting, and I don't want to waste my energy on someone unworthy. When you get back to Bright Star Corp, standing on your own 2 feet, that's when I'll forgive you. Alex looked downcast, listening helplessly, saying nothing. After saying everything I needed to, Chris and I left together. Half a month later, when Alex was discharged, I personally went to pick him up. He was still living in the apartment we'd prepared for the wedding, with everything arranged exactly as before. Some of the collectibles I'd bought were still in their original spots. Even the sapphire necklace was still lying on the coffee table. Seeing my gaze land on the necklace, Alex seemed to remember something and immediately explained, "The necklace I gave Mia was a replica, not the same as this one." With a calm smile, I replied, "Let's not bring up the past." Alex, visibly struggling to hold back his emotions, sat on the couch, his face pale. The pink cushion I'd bought was still on the couch, and he silently placed it on his lap. I arranged for a housekeeper for him. You haven't fully recovered, so take the time to rest at home. After the housekeeper arrived, I prepared to leave, but Alex stood up and called out, "Jess, you know?" I looked at him coolly. I know. That foreign PhD student had always thought highly of himself but felt unappreciated after joining the university. Mia noticed this and instigated him, placing all the blame on me. Under her influence and with drugs, he attacked me. Alex nodded, expressionless. Yes, I never expected Mia to be so malicious. I'm sorry. After a moment of silence, he muttered painfully, "If I hadn't kept Mia holding on to hope, she wouldn't hate you so much. The danger you were in was my fault." As he spoke, he actually dropped to his knees. I'm sorry, Jess. I glanced outside, noticing that it had started to drizzle. Chris stood in the rain, holding an umbrella, waiting for me. Alex, Chris is waiting for me. I'm leaving. Goodbye. Without looking back, I walked resolutely into the rain. Not long after I got home, Assistant Ryan called, saying that Alex had ignored medical advice and headed straight to the company. I smiled. He's an adult. He'll be accountable for his own actions. Assistant Ryan ended the call without saying more. Chris handed me a cup of ginger tea. Drink this to prevent a cold. After drinking the ginger tea, I took out the invitation I'd received for the Hodge Conjecture Seminar and waved it at Chris. Shall we go? Chris chuckled. I happen to receive an invitation too. Let's go together, of course. While Alex was putting effort into his company, Chris and I immersed ourselves in the world of mathematics. 2 years later, as my contract with the university came to an end, Chris looked at me with nervous anticipation. Would you be willing to stay with me? I nodded. I would. Our relationship wasn't a dramatic love story. Everything was calm and steady, but he truly is perfect for me. The shadows of the past finally lifted. No one would ever use my weaknesses to hurt me again. From Alex's perspective, the first time I saw Jess, she seemed like a celestial being, untouched by worldly concerns, her gaze pure and clear. Who wouldn't want to be in a romance with such a genuine girl? I began to pursue her fervently, and I could tell it was her first relationship. Every bit of her joy was plain to see. She was dating me with marriage in mind. After we got our marriage certificate, I gradually took her for granted. Finally, I made the wrong choice at our wedding. I assumed that someone as gentle and forgiving as her would just wait for me to come back home. But when I returned, her attitude had changed. I still didn't take it seriously. I thought she'd obediently wait where I left her. I even thought her talk of divorce was just a tantrum. So, when I received Mia's call, I left her to face the attacker alone. Mia hadn't lied. She'd slipped in the bathroom at home. When I arrived, she was still lying in the tub, unable to move, with bruises on her legs. I carried her to the bed, and she took the chance to cling to me. Still in control, I pushed her away. She looked at me with hurt in her eyes. "Alex, do you not love me anymore?" I scoffed. "The moment you broke up with me all those years ago, I stopped loving you." Mia's face fell, tears streaming down. "I come from humble beginnings, a vegetable vendor father and a homemaker mother. All my current achievements came through sheer determination and grit. During my early career, when I was scraping by with no money, Mia saw me struggling, barely affording a basement to live in, surviving on cheap buns and pickled vegetables. She couldn't handle it for even 3 months and broke up with me. She abandoned me at my lowest. I later heard from friends that she only came back to me after being dumped by a wealthy boyfriend. My vanity took over, and I wanted to show her how well I was doing now, with not only a career but also a loving wife. I foolishly took her on a business trip, and she used that opportunity to get into my bed when I was drunk. What shouldn't have happened, happened. Panicked, I suddenly received a call from Assistant Ryan, telling me Jess was hospitalized after a miscarriage. Only then did I learn what she'd gone through the day I left. When I visited her in the hospital, she looked pale and unwell. I brought Mia to apologize, but it only made things worse. I could feel Jess slipping away from me. After our divorce, the university administrators praised her excellence, and I finally realized my shallowness and arrogance. She had a hearing impairment but never felt inferior. She lived a bright, passionate life, and I despicably used her vulnerability to weaken her self-confidence, hoping she wouldn't leave me. As it turns out, I was the fool. I gave Mia some money to stop pestering me, but she wasn't content, blaming Jess for my indifference. She secretly manipulated a mentally unstable doctoral student to harm Jess. Thankfully, I saved her life. She told me that the moment I stepped into Bright Star Corp's office healthy again would be the moment she forgave me. The day I was discharged, I rushed to Bright Star Corp as quickly as I could. "Jess, have you forgiven me?" When Mia was sentenced, I went to see her one last time. "Jess and Chris are together now. They make a good match." Mia froze for a moment, then burst into maniacal laughter. "Perfect, just perfect. If I can't be happy, neither should you." I looked at her coldly. "You're beyond redemption. Spend the rest of your life facing your punishment in prison." Mia's face twisted in rage as she hurled insults at me. Later, I heard Jess had a daughter who resembled Chris. I thought, she's probably another little genius.